Welcome everybody. Here are the ingredients that I used to make my Russian pelmenis. Ingredients on the left were for the dough and on the right were for the filling, though the eggs were actually in the dough, so that's a little wrong. I started with the dough. Go ahead and mix your wet ingredients into your mixer to start with. Blend them on a relatively high speed until everything is well blended. Then, as you can see, next to me I have the blue bowl of flour, and I will start adding the flour in, a pretty large portion, about half of it at once, and then progressively less at a time. As many of you know, if you add more than a little bit of flour at a time to a mixer going at a high speed, not much of your flour stays in the bowl. So a little bit of flour at a time until you're down to a cup at a time, and then you can do just tablespoons at a time. Our goal is to get it blended enough for the dough mixture no longer to stick to the bottom of the bowl. So here you can see I'm mixing my wet ingredients, and they do kind of froth up a little bit. Here I've added some flour, starting to kind of thicken, and here you can see it's still sticking to the bottom, so I add some more flour, and now as you can see it is no longer sticking to the bottom. So now this dough is ready to be taken out. So you have to scrape it off of the dough hook, and then you take it out and put it on a cutting board. We just put some flour on ours because, as you can see, it is still rather tacky to the touch. So once you get it out, you can just kind of coat it in some flour, set it there, and then we're going to move on to our meat filling. The dough is going to be fine. It doesn't need to be put into the refrigerator according to the recipe. Just go ahead and coat that dough up, and then our next step is going to be sauteing onions. So we start with a little olive oil in the pan. Then we're going to saute our onions until they are golden and soft. It's about 8 to 9 minutes. Once they are there, then we add our garlic, saute for another minute, and add to the meat mixture. I've put all of the ingredients here into the bowl, adding the onions, and then we're going to mix it on, I feel like I did a medium speed. You can go ahead and add your paddle attachment here, mix it up, and once you think it has a pretty good mix, we are going to go ahead and assemble them. So the dough is rather difficult to work with. You're supposed to roll it out into about 1.5 to 2 inch circles. Then add a little bit of the filling, pinch it together. The article was not super clear on, after you fold it in half and seal the edges, exactly what kind of shape you were supposed to fold it into. So I just kind of was winging it. It worked out all right. You can buy molds to make these, which I think if you're going to do regularly would be very helpful, and you'd get a lot more uniform production. There was a lot of dough and a lot of mix. It took me about 3 hours in total to complete this project. The dough itself was also very elastic. I had a very hard time rolling it out and getting it to stay rolled out, so I ended up throwing the dough over my head like you do with pizza crust. Worked out fairly well. It stretched the dough out like I needed, until, of course, I got flour in my eye, and then I was not doing so well. So once you get your dough rolled out, we ended up using a biscuit cutter in the appropriate size, and that worked well. You're going to want to put them all on parchment paper on top of a cookie sheet and freeze. We froze overnight since it was already kind of late into the night. Once you're ready to cook them, you're going to boil them in water. We chose to use broth since we wanted to kind of have a soup dumpling combination. Once they float to the top, then you cook them for a few more minutes. Traditionally, you will toss these in butter. I found that that was a little too rich for me, so we went ahead and served them just straight out of the broth. And of course, any leftovers that you have should be given to your neighborhood dog that wanders by for cookies.